Hi, in this video I'd like to talk about third-party toy companies in relation to collecting masterpiece scale Transformers. I'll look at what the term third-party means in regards to Transformers figures and talk a little about some of the companies that make them. In January of 2023, I made a brief introduction to collecting masterpiece Transformers figures. What I'd like to do now in some of my next videos is dig a little deeper and expand on some of the ideas I touched on. This time I want to look at third-party figures. Let's begin by clearing up exactly what the term third-party actually means in this context. Third-party is an unofficial term coined over time by fans and collectors. An example of the way it's used when referring to collecting Transformers might be if you yourself were to create an original piece of art, or say a drawing, containing an existing Transformers character, maybe Hotrod or Optimus Prime, but with your own concept, your own layout, your own design. That could be said to be third party. Hasbro own the rights to the Transformers, but you've created a brand new object based on their characters. Now alternatively, if you were to make an exact copy of an existing piece of Transformers art, like trace the cover of a comic book or something, and tell people you made it up yourself, maybe even sell it for money, then that's just plain plagiarism, or what we Transformers collectors refer to as knockoffs. I'll talk more about this type of figure in a future video. As I briefly mentioned in my previous video, Hasbro and Japanese company Takara, who sold Hasbro the original toys that eventually became known as the Transformers in the West, and who still continue to make official Transformers products to this day, seem fairly laid back when it comes to defending the intellectual property of their product. Nobody knows for sure why this is, but we can speculate. Some collectors believe it would be impossible to take every company who make transforming robots to court. Others believe Hasbro are happy for other companies to keep their brand thriving in the hearts and minds of fans as long as it doesn't affect their bottom line. Some even think Hasbro or Takara might secretly own some of the third-party companies. It's worth stressing again that third-party is an unofficial term that fans have coined. In a legal sense, the definition of third-party is likely to mean something very different. If it helps in the context of Transformers collecting though, think of first-party as Hasbro or Takara, and second-party as a company that has a licensing agreement with Hasbro or Takara, for example IDW Comics. So in summary, the term third party is used here to refer to toys and accessories made by unlicensed companies from original designs but clearly made to emulate known Transformers characters. Whatever the reason for getting away with the obvious similarities, the third party scene came to prominence around the same time as the official Masterpiece line began in the early 2000s. That's not to say the term is only used when describing masterpiece scale items though. Transformers come in many different shapes and sizes, and third-party companies make toys to fit around them all. The first masterpiece figure was Optimus Prime, released to celebrate the character's 20th anniversary in 2003. MPO-1, Convoy as he's known to Japanese audiences. I remember seeing the Hasbro version in Toys R Us here in the UK at the time. I would have been 26 or 27. The hefty price tag certainly put me off buying it, but I vividly recall being impressed that a figure had finally been made aimed at adult collectors that looked great in both modes. Finally, somebody had made the toy I always wanted as a child. This one actually looked, at the time at least, like the perfect representation of Optimus Prime. It even had the Matrix. It was like the character had rolled straight out of the small screen and onto the shelf. Since then, many better versions of Optimus, official and otherwise, have been released. But this figure set the standard. At the time, nothing else like it had ever been made. The only problem was, there was no trailer included for the alt mode. What good was Optimus Prime in truck form without his trailer? Okay, so it mysteriously vanished every time he transformed in the cartoon, but he couldn't just ride around without it in his vehicle mode. It would be 3 years until an updated Optimus Prime was released as MPO-4, Optimus Prime Convoy Perfect Edition, with his first official Masterpiece trailer. So in the interim, a couple of different companies that had absolutely nothing to do with Hasbro or Takara decided to do something about it and fill the gap. Toy companies have always been more brazen in the East. Knockoffs are common and trademarks and copyrights have been ignored for years. So the first company to try their hand at a trailer for MPO1 was Justitoys, who made a limited run of their version of Prime's trailer in 2005. Released under the radar to avoid any legal heat, it was a nice attempt to give collectors a way to display MPO1 Prime with the trailer. But it was on the small side and pretty basic, with no parts or accessories inside. In 2006, the company that would eventually be known as Fans Toys, and remember their name because we'll definitely be coming back to them later, made a much better attempt with their trailer designed by Daliange. I hope I pronounced that right. Another very limited run, again under the radar and difficult to get hold of. It was larger, more detailed, better quality, and contained command center parts as well as roller. Even MPO4 didn't include roller. It even had stickers reminiscent of the original Optimus Prime toy from 1983. Ironically, it came out the same year as MPO4 anyway, but it was exactly what collectors were looking for. And neither of these companies got sued, so that was that. The gates were open, the ball was rolling. Transformers' popularity was given a shot in the arm with the release of the first Michael Bay movie in 2007. Love them or loathe them, it's undeniable that the film franchise helped take the Transformers brand to heights it hadn't reached in a while. The robots in disguise were again popular in a way they hadn't been since the mid-1980s. The official Masterpiece line slowly continued over the next few years, but the renewed popularity of the brand meant Hasbro and Takara simply couldn't produce new designs quick enough to meet demand for Masterpiece quality characters. Children like me, who grew up with the original toys, now wanted modern quality representations to feed our nostalgia. And so, emboldened perhaps by the lack of rebuking the makers of those trailers received in those early days, other unlicensed companies such as Impossible Toys and iGear started to take advantage. Appealing to the adult collector market, they started with accessories and upgrade kits before soon turning to full standalone figures. Beginning with obscure characters that Hasbro and Takara were more likely to turn a blind eye to, doubtful ever to make those characters themselves, and gradually getting braver with more well-known characters. In 2010, Fans Project, who had previously made a name 2 years earlier with the popular upgrade City Commander kit for an official Ultra Magnus toy, created Defender, based on the Autobot triple changer Springer. Not at the Masterpiece scale, but significant because it marked the first time a third-party company had dared make their own unique standalone version of a known character. Just as with the trailers years earlier, they got away with it. In 2013, Fans Toys, who had made the Optimus Prime trailer in 2006, created Quakewave, their version of Decepticon Shockwave. For arguably the first time, a standalone figure had been made specifically to fit in with the Masterpiece scale collection that actually lived up to official products. You could argue that others had tried, but this figure was the first to really walk the walk. And from the packaging and extras, it couldn't have been more obvious Fans Toys brazenly intended this figure to fit in with official Masterpieces. When Takara finally made their version of the character 3 years later, fans were like, meh, I'm actually happy with what I've already got, thanks. The number of unlicensed companies producing third-party figures now increased exponentially and still holds strong to this day. Even to the point where multiple companies release their own versions of the same character simultaneously. How many versions of Springer have there been now? 6? 7? In vague and honestly quite amusing attempts to avoid lawsuits, third-party companies tend not to use the well-known Autobot and Decepticon faction symbols on their figures, or official original character names. Instead, characters are given monikers intended to invoke the sound or spirit of the original, with often amusing results. Space Racer instead of Cosmos is fair enough, but how we made it from Soundwave to Pony and his little partner is beyond me. So, as I mentioned earlier, Hasbro and Takara have made seemingly little effort to protect their trademark over the years, but to say they've turned a blind eye altogether would be an exaggeration. Hasbro did take steps to ban the sale of third-party products, even including artwork, at Transformers fan convention BotCon in the States. Intellectual property rights have even begun tightening in China recently too, with the introduction of laws that allow police to conduct raids when copyright infringement is suspected. Court cases following from these raids have already been successfully won. All this leaves people wondering just how far you have to push these companies before you get their attention. One specific instance I've heard of where Hasbro actually threatened legal action was to put one company off making a Unicron figure at the same time Hasbro themselves imminently planned to release the very special crowd-funded HasLab version of the character in 2021. Because these third-party companies are unofficial, they are largely shrouded in mystery. Word of mouth over the years has suggested much overlap between the different players. Some share the same production factories. Some might even use official factories after hours when someone is paid to look the other way. Who knows what to believe? And with toy designers working as freelancers, their designs can be bought by whoever pays best at the time. It's also possible with all the different players that come and go, and all the crafty legal dodging, companies are simply rebranding and continuing under different names. This is mostly hearsay though. The truth is, as long as these companies continue to work in the shadows, we'll never really be sure what's going on. One notable trend in third-party companies has been the creation of combiner figures. In 2010, Fans Projects created a very popular upgrade to an official Bruticus combiner by releasing 2 unique figures designed to complete the combined product. In 2012, TFC became the first third-party manufacturer to create an unofficial combiner with their take on Devastator, or Hercules. It might not have been perfect, but it was largely considered better than any combiner Hasbro or Takara had made to that point, and it changed the Transformers collecting game forever. In 2016, it was another third-party version of Devastator, called Constructor, that rocked the Transformers collector's world. The Toy World release was bigger than any previous combiner, dubbed by fans as the first parts-former, because it incorporated extra pieces other than just the 6-component Constructicon figures. Rumour has it that Toy World never paid the designers of this marvellous piece. Despite their dubious ethics, I would still love to own this item. It's definitely on my bucket list. I just love it. More recently, a company called Justitoys, which was apparently formed by those unappreciated designers of Toy World's Devastator, has continued the combiner trend with 2 more very impressive sets. Kronos, aka Superion, and Bruticon, aka Bruticus. Incidentally, remember just now when I said Hasbro had laid down the law when their own version of Unicron was in production? Well, it was Zeta who were told to cease and desist. As it happens, a smaller version of Zeta's Unicron design was actually made eventually anyway, and very nice it is too, even if the HasLab version is bigger. Since 2010, many different third-party companies have begun releasing, with varying levels of completion, combining sets of Predacons, Protectobots, Aerialbots, Stunticons, Combaticons, and more. I've actually lost count of how many different versions of Devastator there are now. At the time of making this video, Takara are only just now catching up with combiners in the form of the Trainbots, from the Japanese anime Transformers Headmasters. A little late to the party there, honestly. With so many different companies making not Transformers, and different ones coming and going all the time, it can be really hard to keep track of them all. Different companies specialise in different types of product. The successful players seem to know what style of toy they're making and stick to it. It's no surprise that finding a niche and growing a loyal fan base goes a long way to keeping a company going. Some opt for cartoon accurate designs, others a movie or comic book aesthetic, while others still go for highly stylised, exaggerated or detailed looks. This is wonderful news for collectors as there are so many different products to choose from. For my own collection, I like a generally cartoon accurate look to my figures, but I don't mind a slightly stylised, detailed slant one little bit. The cartoon designs can be a little flat and blocky. I think MP10, although over a decade old now, hits the sweet spot perfectly. As I mentioned before, a good example of variety is the character Springer. Another one is the big man himself, Optimus Prime. It seems everyone has taken a crack at him at some point. With so many figures available from different companies just at the masterpiece scale, there's something for everyone. Honestly, there are just too many different third-party manufacturers to list them all, from Fans Project, Fans Hobby and Open and Play, to DX9 and Gigapower, Unique Toys and Toy World. This list goes on, but here are some of my favourites, as well as some of their best offerings to date. Keith's Fantasy Club, or KFC, not to be confused with that chicken place, is a Chinese company that released their first toy in 2013. An Autobot mini cassette Rhino Horn, aka Ram Horn. Since then they've made some nice masterpiece style figures over the years, including the only Junkions. And this guy I have right here, Transistor, who was the only option for a decent take on Blaster until recently. Just like MP10, I think it gets the balance between cartoon accuracy and stylised details just right. In 2011, Maketoys created the Battle Tanker add-on kit for an existing official Optimus Prime figure. From there they moved on to standalone figures. Rumour has it that Maketoys was started by designers who previously worked for the aforementioned company Fans Project. By 2017, they'd made arguably the best Seeker mould at the time, and Starscream was quickly followed by Skywarp, Thundercracker and a slew of other recolours and variations. Maketoys Starscream, or Meteor, was historic because it was arguably the first time Transformers collectors disregarded their existing official version of a character en masse in favour of an alternative. It really was that much better. The status of this figure wouldn't last forever, but we'll come back to that. They also made some truly great headmasters too. I just love their hard head and chrome dome. I actually have their 2017 version of Jazz here in my collection, called Downbeat, and I still rate it as the best representation of my favourite Autobots. Until recently it looked like Maketoys were done. They went quiet for a while, but they recently came back with announcements that they'll finally be continuing those headmasters as well as their Conehead Seekers. Now we're down to my big three, probably obvious choices to anyone who knows this subject, but there's a good reason these three companies are considered so highly. Mastermind Creations, or MMC, started in 2010 and is now best known for its two very distinct sublines. The Masterpiece-inspired Ocular Max line, I have Springer and Cliffjumper here, and the reformatted line which contains designs based on IDW comics. I absolutely love the Dicamus, is that how you pronounce that? Dicamus? Dicamus? Dicamus. We'll go with Dicamus, or Roadbuster. MMC have done very well from the Combiner trend, with great versions of Combaticons, Predictobots and Predacons. X-Transbots released their first figure, Glider, aka Power Glide, in 2011 and have since built up a reputation as one of the best third-party companies with their slightly stylised designs. They're actually a company I have no experience of personally, but it's obvious to any collector that they're a contender in this genre. They make great figures and, importantly, keep momentum going with frequent new releases. I'm sure it's only a matter of time before one of their figures ends up on my shelves. My own personal favourite is their Abaddon, aka Galvatron. I'm also quite partial to their Run Amok and Runabout too. There's that name again, the company that started all those years ago with the trailer for MP01 and who made the first illegitimate standalone masterpiece in Quake Wave. Over the years, Fans Toys has made its name as arguably the best third-party Transformers manufacturer out there. They continue to put new products out regularly and have a loyal fan base. With other companies coming and going around them, the fact that they're still thriving to this day says it all. Some of my favourite Fans Toys figures include Phoenix, aka Skyfire, which I'm lucky enough to own, Sheridan or Warpath, and their 5 Dinobots. One day I'll own these. They've recently followed Takara's own approach to lean heavily into toon-accurate designs, demonstrated here with recent versions of Jazz and Cliffjumper. There are no signs of this company slowing down anytime soon. This company finally dethroned Maketoys by producing what is, many would say, the best Seeker mould of all time. I have Starscream, Skywarp and Thundercracker here in my own collection. Don't get me wrong, the recent Takara versions of these characters are good, but these here are just perfect in my opinion. Rumour has it that Deformation Space is actually another third-party company called Transform Element, who themselves made a stunning version of Optimus Prime, operating under a different name. And further rumours still suggest that both Deformation Space and Transform Element are linked to another company called Black Mamba, which I'll get back to shortly. Man, this stuff gets complicated. Whatever the case, Deformation Space followed the Seekers up with a nice version of Blaster. I still prefer my more stylised KFC Blaster, but I can't deny they've nailed the clean, cartoon-accurate look. I really can't wait to see what they come up with next. I'd never heard of Cang Toys until recently, but when I saw these Predacons, they absolutely blew my mind. I don't know these characters well, but it looks to me like they've taken some liberties with the names and designs. But the way these figures look, the paintwork, the stylised nature just combine to make something of real beauty. I'm very excited to see where they go from here. I also wanted to mention a couple of great third-party companies who make figures at a smaller scale than the usual masterpiece size, referred to as Legends scale. Magic Square and New Age. These companies are making figures that, although much smaller, are simply amazing. Magic Square have rattled through the G1 cartoon cast at an incredible rate, and the way they capture the cartoon aesthetic is frankly incredible. If I was starting collecting Transformers again now, I'd honestly be very tempted to fill my shelves with these amazing little mini masterpieces. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to mention the third-party companies making great figures based on the character designs from the live-action movies. I've never been into the Bayverse myself, but I can't deny that Wei Zhang and Black Mamba, who I suggested could be linked to Deformation Space, have made some truly amazing toys. Unfortunately, Wei Zhang's factories were apparently raided by Chinese police in 2020. Who knows, perhaps going after the movie-inspired range was finally a step too far. There's never been a better time to collect Masterpiece Transformers, and a lot of that is simply down to the fact that there is such huge variety available. That variety wouldn't exist without these third-party companies. I wouldn't say it's particularly fair that people are making money illegally when there are many legitimate companies who pay a lot of money to Hasbro and Takara to license their intellectual property. But let's face it, as a collector I just can't deny it's nice to have options, and it's great that the competition between these companies forces them all to try harder and do better. I do wonder if the tightening of laws in China will make a difference. It doesn't seem they have yet. At any rate, the third-party scene is alive and kicking. In fact, it's stronger and more diverse than ever. But what really struck me while researching for this video was how this scene is so fluid and quick-changing. Many companies that were big names in the game 3 or 4 years ago are all but forgotten now. I'm excited to see what the future holds. So please do all those usual good things like thumbs and bells and subscribing. I enjoy making these videos and I can't wait to bring you some more Transformers content. I really appreciate all your comments and love learning more from my fellow collectors. What are your own favourite third-party releases? Do you prefer the Fans Toys or Gigapower Dinobots? What's your favourite combiner set? I genuinely love to know. Thanks for watching. Until next time, happy collecting!